Hey, so here's a question that might blow your mind. You know DALL-E, right? The AI that generates images from text descriptions? What if I told you that same kind of AI is now being used to invent entirely new proteins that have never existed anywhere in nature? Not predicting existing ones. Literally making up brand new molecular structures from scratch. And this is not science fiction anymore. There are protein drugs designed by AI right now sitting in FDA review. So let me back up, because this is genuinely wild. When you think about proteins, most people think chicken breasts. But a protein is basically a long string of amino acids, like a strand of Christmas lights on a string. And what makes a protein functional is how that string folds up into a specific 3D shape. Think of it like rumpling up those Christmas lights into a very specific knot. Get the knot wrong, and the protein doesn't work. Get it right, and you have something that can fight disease, break down toxins, or build new materials. For decades, figuring out how a protein folds was one of the hardest problems in biology. Then in 2020, DeepMind's AlphaFold solved it. Suddenly, we could predict how any known protein would fold. But here's where it gets interesting. While everyone was celebrating AlphaFold's ability to predict existing proteins, a team at the University of Washington led by David Baker had a different idea. What if we could go backwards? What if instead of predicting how an existing protein folds, we could tell an AI, "Give me a protein that folds into this exact shape I need." And the breakthrough came from an unexpected direction. They took the same type of AI model that powers DALL-E, diffusion models, and applied it to proteins. Here is how diffusion works with DALL-E. You start with a noisy image, just random pixels, and train the AI to gradually add detail until you get a coherent picture. The AI learns what a cat looks like by learning how to reverse the process of adding noise to a picture of a cat. RFdiffusion does the same thing, but with protein structures. Start with a noisy, meaningless blob of atoms. Train the AI to gradually refine it until it becomes a functional protein structure. The AI learns what a working protein looks like by learning how to reverse the noise. Same architecture, different output. Pixels versus proteins. The team at Baker Lab called it RFdiffusion, RFdiffusion diffusion, and the results were stunning. They published in Nature in early 2023, and the numbers are insane. They generated designs for over 200,000 novel protein structures and tested them in a real wet lab. The AI just made up proteins that biology had never created before, and they worked. The AI designed proteins that could act as vaccines. It designed enzymes. It designed binding proteins that could attach to specific targets like a drug. Think about what this means. For thousands of years, every protein that ever existed was the result of billions of years of evolution. Random mutation, natural selection, and billions of animals and plants doing their thing. And now a diffusion model sitting on some GPUs can design better proteins in a weekend. The Baker Lab described it as having a molecular 3D printer for biology. And honestly, that is the most accurate description I have seen. You describe what you need, a protein that binds to this virus, an enzyme that breaks down this toxin, a vaccine scaffold that looks like this, and the AI prints out a protein structure that matches your description. The fact that they tested 200,000 designs in the lab is what makes this real. Because AI hallucinating protein structures would be funny, but useless. AI hallucinating protein structures that actually work in a wet lab when synthesized, that changes everything. Now here is the part that most people don't realize. The race for AI protein design is already underway, and it is moving faster than almost any technology race in history. DeepMind, the same company that built AlphaFold, already announced AlphaFold 3. It goes beyond prediction. It can now predict how proteins interact with DNA, with RNA, and with drug molecules. That is a massive leap because in the real world, proteins don't exist in isolation. They interact with everything. Meta released their own model called ESMFold. It is less accurate than AlphaFold and RFdiffusion, but it is dramatically faster. Because speed matters when you are screening hundreds of thousands of candidates. Then there is Generate Biomedicines. They built a protein design tool called Chroma, and Chroma literally uses the same DALL-E approach. Take a text description, generate a protein structure. And here is the kicker. Generate Biomedicines has 100 AI-designed proteins in development, 4 of them in preclinical development, and they are preparing for FDA submissions. They will likely be the first company to get an AI-designed protein approved as a drug. The DALL-E comparison isn't just cute marketing here. Chroma's architecture is fundamentally the same idea. DALL-E, a cat riding a bicycle in space, generates an image. Chroma, a protein that binds to influenza virus X, generates a 3D protein structure. So what does all of this actually mean for you and me? First, drug discovery. Right now it takes 10 to 15 years and billions of dollars to develop a new drug. If AI can design proteins on demand, proteins that specifically target diseases, that timeline could collapse from years to months. We have seen this pattern before with other AI breakthroughs. The gap between it works in the lab and it is in the medicine cabinet is still there, but the gap is closing fast. Second, vaccines. Remember how fast mRNA vaccines were developed for COVID? Now imagine if the AI can design the actual protein structures that make the vaccine effective, instead of just adapting sequences from the virus itself. We could potentially design vaccines for diseases that have had no vaccine for decades. Third, materials. Proteins are not just for medicine. They can be used to break down plastic waste, create new materials that are stronger than steel, develop enzymes that capture carbon from the atmosphere. The same AI that is designing drugs is also designing solutions to environmental problems. The fact that all of this is happening right now, in 2025 and 2026, while most people are still trying to figure out whether AI can write good marketing copy, might be the most underappreciated story in technology today. So next time someone asks you what AI is doing that is actually important, you can tell them, it is inventing molecules that could cure diseases that have killed people for centuries. Not generating pictures of cats. Actual life-saving biology. That is the real power of AI. Not what it can create on a screen, but what it can create in the real world.